Hello and welcome to Catholic Answers Live. It's Tuesday. That usually means open forum, and we're sticking to it today. Open forum, 2 hours of open forum today. Our number is 888-318-7884, but those early birds, they already filled up half the lines. So if you've got a question about the Catholic faith, whether you're Catholic or not, you're welcome to call 888-318-7884. Catholic faith encompasses a great deal. I know that because I've got a copy of the Catechism, and it's a big, thick book, and that's just the basics. So if you've got a question about the Catholic faith, whether it's about sacraments, whether it's about the Bible, whether it's about the popes, saints, moral teachings, maybe you want to know something about Jesus, you are welcome to call 888-318-7884. Again, anybody can call. You don't have to be Catholic. Anybody can call with a question. You don't have to be Christian. You just got to be able to dial that phone, 888-318-7884. Second hour, Tim Staples will be here with us. First hour, Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology at EWTN. Hello, Colin.
Hey there, Cy. Good to be back with you again.
Very nice to be back with you as well. Thanks for doing it with us.
You're welcome. Happy to.
Open forum means they get to ask you anything. Do you ever get stumped? Are you ever like, I don't know. Do you ever remember getting stumped? You have?
No, I do. Sure. It's very easy to exhaust the limits of anybody's.
I guess. Well, you are America's favorite theologian. Again, 888-318-7884, our number, 888-318-7884. When Colin's here, good time to point this out because I think this is very confusing to many people. But Catholic Answers and EWTN are in separate places. Colin is in Alabama, and I am in Southern California.
Yeah.
And you're falling asleep these days to the beautiful sound of cicadas. Is that right? Are they out this year?
They have been out in force since about May. And just to forewarn you, you may hear the beautiful sound of a thunderstorm passing through. So if you hear some rumbling, that's right here in Birmingham.
Oh, that's so nice. A nice Alabama summer thunderstorm.
Yep, pretty much every day.
Yeah, it's not a low humidity state, is it?
No, it really isn't. It isn't. And we either have blistering hot spells with no rain or rain every day for, a couple weeks even. We can go with getting rain every day.
Again, our number, 888-31-TRUTH. Let me tell you. I was going to tell you how many lines are open, but I'm not going to tell you because there's no lines open. I better go to the phones. In Memphis, Tennessee, where I imagine it might be hot as well right now. Laura in Memphis, Tennessee. Watching on Catholic.com. You're first up today, Laura. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan.
Great. Thank you so much for taking my call. My question is, how does dispensation work with regards to the effect of the sin on our soul and our need to be cleansed of the sin in purgatory?
Okay. That's not a term that's normally used with respect to that. Are you thinking of an indulgence? That you continue your penance by doing something the church has given an indulgence to, perhaps?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't think so. So my husband and I have received dispensation from our pastor for him to have a vasectomy for health reasons, but we're uncertain if we want to actually go through that procedure because some of the things that I was reading recently was talking about how even if you had received dispensation, I thought that was the term that they used for a sin, that you still need to be cleansed of that sin in purgatory, even though you've been forgiven and can still go to heaven. And so that's where I was kind of trying to find out how.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, our pastor said that.
I get now. I get what your meaning is. Yeah, the difficulty is you can't be dispensed to commit sin. So I don't know what he's thinking of. I would say maybe here is a case, Sai asked me if I ever get stumped, where perhaps the medical knowledge exceeds what I know, but I know that I don't know of a case where for instance, if a man has cancer in those areas and the cancer has to be removed and there is a secondary effect of contraception, then that's a perfectly legitimate thing. Uh, but it depends, I guess, on what the intention is and whether there's a medically sound reason for something other than to prevent conception, to prevent someone, in this case yourself, from getting pregnant. You can't be pre-forgiven of something like that, and you can't be dispensed from a moral obligation, which is a grave moral obligation. So I would say the questions to go back with, and maybe you should get a second priestly opinion, is first of all, for your doctor, where very often women can have potential risks in getting pregnant, and doctors will suggest that. The church never suggests that, however. And so I think you need to clarify the medical dimension of this first. And if there is no medical reason, such as to prevent disease or to heal disease, actually preventing would be problematic as well, but to heal disease, then there can be no justification for what has been medically traditionally called a vasectomy. In other words, a contraception for the man. And the same thing would apply to removal of reproductive organs in the woman as well. There must be medical risk to life, to health in such a way that is medically justified, apart from any consideration of its effect on the ability to have a child or to prevent a child or such. So I think the medical and the moral are two things that you need to look into more deeply.
Okay, Laura?
Sure. So, and if dispensation is granted,
he has no power to dispense you from.
Okay.
He has no power. He can dispense from the laws of the church. He can't dispense from the laws of God.
Well, so thank you so much. I really appreciate that information. Here. That certainly helps us.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think clarify the medical situation and maybe get advice from somebody else to see that it applies in your case. I'm not assuming something here I don't know, but those are the aspects of it you need to look into.
Laura, thanks very, very much. Again, our number is 888-318-7884. If you have a question about the Catholic faith, whether you are Catholic or not, you are welcome to call. Next up in Oklahoma, Ryan, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Ryan, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan. Ryan? Nope. Not on line 3? All right. Hang on. We'll have to come back to that. And we will come back to you, Ryan. Let's go to Rachel in Omaha, Nebraska, listening on EWTN. Rachel, thank you for waiting. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan.
Hi. I was calling. So I have 3 teenagers, and as you probably know, the secular world is very, very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of hard questions about LGBTQ and the church's stance on it. I understand it, but I don't know how to explain it to them because they always come back to me with tougher questions. And I'd really like some input on how to handle it or what to say to them that will make sense.
Sure. And of course, the starting point is what the church teaches. If we believe that Christ is God, He established a church and He gave His authority to the church, then we believe the teaching, and that's got to be the starting point, not the models of the world or the views of the world or the culture, whatever it may be. And there, the church's views usually addressed in the situation of homosexuality, but also in address to the whole movement to, I guess you might call it, instead of gay liberation, the LGBTQTA, and then on and on and on with alphabetic numbers there, letters. Liberation has to do with, first of all, everybody's made in the dignity, is made in the image of God and has human dignity. We must respect their dignity. that doesn't mean that we have to have respect for the things that do wrong. So the church moral law is quite clear. So the moral law is that human sexuality is for marriage and that everybody has an obligation to chastity within their vocational state. In other words, the obligation of married people is different from the obligation of priests and religious and so on. But in all cases, the obligation of chastity is there. And so that would apply across the board, whether you're a single man with a heterosexual attraction or a homosexual attraction, or likewise a woman, or whatever variation of that is proposed today. There's the obligation of chastity there. Where the church disagrees with a lot of this thinking is when they say that, well, this is just human nature. If it were just human nature, then there would be identifiable sexual and gender groups beyond self-identification by one's feelings and opinions. The LGBTQ movement, to the extent that it's calling for dignity and respect and non-discrimination within certain limits, such as the limit of religious freedom, is justified in doing that. Often hate has been directed at individuals who have these attractions and so on. That's not called for, at least from Christians. It's not justifiable. But then you can make a lot of distinctions regarding, well, does that mean that, for instance, a case that just came up here in the last few days where a court ruled in favor of the church that's the Archdiocese of Chicago, who had fired a music minister who had gone and had a same-sex marriage. Because as a minister of the church, working in the church and teaching by his example and by other aspects of what he did in his job, he teaches people that, well, the church accepts gay marriage and so on. And the Archdiocese said, no, this is not permitted by your contract with us because we're a Catholic entity. And they let him go, and he sued, and the church was upheld. What the LGBTQ movement is not looking just for people to say, it's your life, live it as you want. We might not like it, but I want to live as I want. And to that we can say, you're right, we don't like it, but we're not going to interfere with that. We're not going to hate you. We're not going to attack you. But they want more than that. They want us to conform to their view of things. That's the movement aspect of it, as opposed to the individuals who have these various feelings of what gender they are or what their sexual orientation are. All of those things, although the church would say, well, that's not legitimate, you need to correct that morally and spiritually and so on. The church says this effort to make all of us to conform and approve of your behaviors and feelings and attitude is not right. As Americans, of course, we recognize our religious freedom rights. It's not right from that point of view. And of course, from the church's point of view, it's not right before Christ and God the Father. So that's where the difference of opinion is. The difference between the respect we owe to individuals, regardless of their feelings and the other things that we may not like and agree with and think are totally wrong-headed, and the idea of a group of people banding together using political and cultural power to impose their views on the rest of us. That's the movement, and that's what the church doesn't condemn, or does condemn. Now, you can take the case, for example, of Pope Francis. Some people have criticized him because people have been homosexual. They've even come in with their partners, if you will, and he has greeted them with charity and so on and so forth. But then also when he addresses this issue as a movement, as an ideology, he is very firm that this is wrong. It's not from God at all, and it should be opposed on those grounds. So the love and the respect you show to people as individuals, regardless of who they are and what they do and what they think, wrong as it may be, is quite distinct from protecting ourselves as a church and individuals against a movement which wants to impose its values and ideology on the rest of society. And they're using government, they're using media, all of whom are generally aligned with their thinking to do it. That's what's wrong with the movement.
Rachel, I got to leave it there because we need to go to a break. But because you're a mom who asked that question, I'd love to give you a copy of our book, Made This Way, from Trent Horn and Layla Miller, because it's about answering these hard moral questions from a parent's perspective. Whether you're answering small children, middle school children, or teenagers, they address all of it. And quite a few very tough moral questions are addressed in there. So if you'll hang on, we'll send you a copy of Made This Way, and we will be right back with more Open Forum with our guest, Colin Donovan, right after this.
Catholic Answers Live.
Hi, this is Cy Kellett. Don't forget to check out the latest episode of our podcast, Catholic Answers Focus. You can listen each week to the world's premier podcast on Catholic apologetics at CatholicAnswersFocus.com or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Catholic Answers Focus, now available at CatholicAnswersFocus.com.
This is Dr. Ray Guarendi from The Doctor Is In. You call in, and we will talk about what matters to you in your life. People, circumstances, emotions, struggles. We can put our heads together, maybe raise both of our IQs to help you solve the problems of life and to use your faith to get even smarter.
The Doctor Is In with Dr. Ray Guarendi. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. We've got 47 titles now in our 20 Answers series. The 20 answers on things like Mary and the sacraments, on Jesus. One of the newest ones is Jimmy Akin's 20 Answers on anti-Catholic myths. I tell you all this because over at shop.catholic.com this month, they're all on sale, 50% off. Buy as many as you like, as few as you like. If you want to just get one, you want to get them all. 50% off on all titles in the 20 Answers series at shop.catholic.com. Our guest this hour is Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology at EWTN, and it is open forum. You can ask Colin whatever you like, whether you're Catholic or not, about the Catholic faith. Maybe it's a moral issue, a sacramental question, a Bible question. All welcome. 888-318-7884. Now we're heading to Kentucky. Austin, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. You are next. Austin, go ahead with your question for Colin.
Thanks for taking my call. My wife is an atheist, and she has resentment towards me for abstaining, and she's not wanting to use NFP. So I was calling, seeking advice.
Yeah, that's a difficult situation, and the concrete facts on the ground, if you will, can vary. But I think in general, you could say you have it in your power to observe the law of the Church. Now, it gets more difficult if, we're going to do that, and if you're using the infertile periods, if you determine when those are, then obviously you can do that. She may not like it, but obviously, and that's going to create some issues in the marriage, perhaps. I think the difficulty comes when she herself wants to use contraception. And so I think to the extent that you're able to, from your side of the equation, practice NFP if you're trying to avoid pregnancy for the reasons which the Church permits, then, and those are all, of course, in Humanae Vitae, the Paul VI document on procreation. Then, and for that you need a serious reason, such as the health of the woman or the financial circumstances are there to bring a child into the world at this time, a reason that is justifiable to avoid a child at this time. And therefore, in that context, you would be justified in abstaining. And there's not a lot that she can do about that. The difficulty would come is if she doesn't want to have any children or have a child and wants to use contraception to make that come to pass. I think perhaps you need to get more particular advice from a confessor, somebody that you know to be pious and orthodox, to get the advice in your particular circumstances and with the details of the question.
Okay, Austin?
Okay.
All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. We go now to Diego in Dallas, Texas, listening on EWTN. Glad to have you, Diego. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Happy to. Nice to have you, Diego.
Yeah, Diego.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say, y'all are my #1 favorite EWTN show.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. Thank you, Diego. I appreciate you you saying that when the vice president for theology at EWTN is on the program,
and an
Diego.
open line host, I might add.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's a big win for us, Diego. Thanks very much. Do you have a question you want to ask Colin?
Oh, yes. I'm just wondering, why are there 2 creeds?
Yeah, that one is one I've been asked before because it's so clear. Now we see the Apostles' Creed sometime at church, especially Lent and Easter time. We say it with the Rosary and so on. All of these things have developed historically. In fact, there's more than 2 creeds. There is a volume which theologians are familiar with called Denzinger. It's a collection of all of the principal magisterial documents over time. And in the early centuries, you find there are a number of creeds in different parts of the Mediterranean basin, one of which is the Roman Baptismal Creed, and that's generally known by the name the Apostles' Creed. What that means is that just like when we go to church on Easter Sunday, particularly on the Easter Vigil, not only are the people who are brought into the church, who are baptized, make a profession of faith in the principal doctrines of the faith regarding the Trinity and Christ and the Holy Spirit and the church and so on, but then the people affirm it as well. And so each of these started in different places as the apostles went out and founded churches in Egypt and Iraq, or what is modern day Iraq, and the area of Turkey, and of course Jerusalem and those places. There was a baptismal creed was needed, an affirmation of the faith. It probably started simply, but then it collected all of the principal things. But then finally, these baptismal creeds were not sufficient because they were very brief and they didn't elaborate on any of the principal teachings. And so as debates came up on, well, what does it mean to say the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? So the great councils began to meet to address these questions, especially there was somebody, usually a priest or a bishop, teaching something contrary what had been received and handed down from the apostles. Out of that developed the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed from those two councils, which is an expanded version of a creed meant to clarify these things. So they sort of had different purposes. One was to clarify the faith in when a heretic arose like Arius or Nestorius or others, to clarify it with a deeper expression, a more complete expression of what this teaching was about. And then the others were the baptismal creeds, which were used in the course of bringing people into the church and catechizing them regarding the principal teachings of the faith. And so from those two occasions, if you will, the teaching occasion and the sacramental occasion of baptism, these two different kinds of creeds developed. And the Nicene Creed eventually became one which was accepted throughout the church, both East and West, so that even today, even though the Orthodox have gone their own way, the Eastern Church went their own way in 1054, they still have the Nicene Creed, as do we. So this is the history there.
What do you think, Diego?
Yes, thank you. That kind of explained it all.
Very good. Well, thanks. I hope you'll call
Okay.
again. Appreciate talking with you.
I appreciate it too. Thank you.
Bye. Our number is 888-318-7884. Our guest is Colin Donovan, the Vice President for Theology at EWTN, and as he said, one of the hosts of Open Line on EWTN. We have to take a quick break, but we're going to do our very best to get back to everybody who's on the line. I see one line open. You can call whether you're Catholic or not. If you got a question about Catholic faith, Catholic people, Catholic teaching, 888-318-7884.
Catholic Answers Live.
Here's a question. Is it really possible to be friends with someone who died 2,000 years ago? Maybe the problem is that we've grown way too comfortable with the story of Jesus. Nice man, right? Taught us to love one another, said not to judge people. We celebrate his birthday every year. It's time to put away this small, safe version of Jesus, says Cy Kellett. Nobody that bland could have transformed the world. In A Teacher of Strange Things, Cy presents Jesus Christ undiluted by sentiment, with all his radical words and deeds uncensored. Do you know someone, your son or daughter perhaps, or maybe your mom or dad, who needs the friendship of Jesus Christ? Do you? Order your copy of A Teacher of Strange Things by visiting shop.catholic.com today or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Catholic Answers is doing it again. We're holding our 7th annual Apologetics Conference this September in beautiful San Diego, California, and we'd like to see you there. Join us September 23rd to 26th for a lively and inspiring conference with an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to jumpstart your faith. It's a great chance to meet all your favorite Catholic Answers apologists and very special guests as we spend 4 days talking about worshiping and adoring our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is where it all begins. Don't miss what promises to be the event of the season. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to ignite, inspire, and inform your faith. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Enter promo code EARLY to save $30. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 888-291-8000 to register. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. 2 hours of open forum today, meaning you can call with any question at all about the Catholic faith. Second hour, Tim Staples will be here with us. This hour, Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology at EWTN, is here, and your calls are welcome. 888-318-7884. We go now to Georgia, where Bradley is listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Bradley, thank you very much for your call. Go ahead with your question for Colin.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
My question was, I was on the internet, and I know that's a pretty dangerous place to get information, but that in the in the 11th century, there was a saint, Jehoshaphat, or Josaphat, maybe, and he was actually Siddhartha, the founder of Buddhism. Is there any truth to that?
No, I don't think so. I think he was a king, actually, in Central Europe, if I'm not mistaken, or in some country. But no, I've never heard that, so I don't know, where that's coming from. Here now, I don't know what kind of website it was, but I know certainly Cy's old enough to remember this time period when the New Age movement was grabbing everybody and saying that, they were all little Christs on their way to being, as we awaited the great final Christ who would come. So Buddha was a Christ and Jesus was a Christ and Muhammad was a. So there may be some of that thinking involved, but it's not Catholic thinking. I've never read or heard any Catholic or read anything claiming that the Church identified Jehoshaphat with with Buddha.
Okay, Bradley.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. 888-318-7. And why do you pick on me, by the way? Size old enough. Like I'm the measure of ancient people? Is that the...
No, I'm probably closer to being the measure of that. But I thought we're sort of within the... You're in the penumbra or the umbra of all of that.
Right.
I think.
Well, there is that thing in the New Age, like, like you said, everybody ends up being Christ, and you usually get to at some point, it always seems to get around to, I am God. And then by the time you've gotten there, you are so far from the truth. That is so dangerous to your soul. But it's given out like that's some kind of great insight.
That's right, and it's certainly not intending in the way that St. Paul intended it, or the church intends it, that we put on Christ. In other words, Christ molds us into an image of himself.
Right.
It's quite a different understanding of us being other Christ.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Ryan in Oklahoma, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Hi, Ryan. You there with us?
Oh, yes, I'm here this time.
All right.
How you doing, Doc?
Very good, thanks. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan.
Awesome. Okay, so I was kind of looking at this debate on the internet. Speaking of the internet.
2 internet questions. Ryan, try to get right up on the phone, okay, so we can hear you clearly.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was seeing this kind of a heated debate on the internet, and I kind of had a question from what I was seeing, but would a prenuptial agreement invalidate a marriage, since it presupposes a divorce, or that there's going to be some separation down the line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't know how a canonist would treat that. One of the things that it might very well invalidate. I'm sort of thinking it does from this point of view. There's a sense in which I could explain it that it doesn't, but we'll start with the one that I think is more general. And that is that when a process, an annulment process, or the investigation for a decree of nullity is undertaken, one of the things they look at is, did the person will the unity? Did they will the procreative dimension of marriage? And I think it's in willing the unity which a prenuptial agreement would have from the beginning, and not, from the very beginning, have violated the intention to marry, which cannot assume that, if it doesn't work out, we'll just go our separate ways. I think that's going to, again, I'm not a canonist. I think that makes a pretty clear case of invalidity. Likewise, we're young kids, but we enjoy life, and we don't intend to get married, to have children rather. We're going to marry, but we're going to avoid children throughout all of our reproductive years. Again, the unwillingness to be open to life would invalidate the marriage. That's the case that I think you're thinking of. Let's presuppose we might go our separate ways, and I'll keep my money in my houses, and you keep yours that I bring into the marriage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other case is there is a circumstance which was more probably prevalent in the past, especially in the royal houses of Europe, where agreements were made regarding things to be done in the marriage that would constitute the character of the marriage, that then if that was violated, the marriage was probably valid, but could separate. So there's a lot of details there in those situations where agreements can be made before marriage that do not violate the two elements of it, that don't touch the nature of marriage. But I think, that would require a canonist to spell out the history of what those would be. but I think it was very common in the cases of the marriages of aristocracy and so on in Europe, and possibly even today, I don't know. Where it was being done for a particular purpose, the parties obviously willing it, but the purpose had to be achieved, and if it was not, then that somehow affected the marriage. But the canonical details of that you'd have to get from a canonist.
And I'm going to leave it there, Ryan. I hope that was helpful to you. Just lots and lots of folks on the line, so I'm going to keep moving. Next one is Ben in Rhode Island, watching on YouTube. Hi, Ben. You there with us?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Ben. Go ahead.
I love the show.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm a first-time caller, so this is my first time on the rodeo. But I have a sacramental question.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to do with, I think there can be times when it is the right thing to do, say in a marriage, when the marriage is valid, but for some reason the couple can't get married by a priest. Like that, I think Romeo and Juliet had something like that. So it's an illicit but valid marriage. The church discourages that for obvious reasons, but it might be the right thing to do rather than to say we can't get married. And I think I'm wondering, in the case of COVID, here in the Diocese of Providence, the public celebration of Masses was forbidden, or I don't know what it was, by the bishop, right? Suppressed, or whatever the word was. And a friend of mine told me that, just recently told me that some priests had been saying Masses, and when people, kind of came in the door was open, and so they were like, okay, they sort of were supposed to, I think, lock the door or tell them no, but they celebrated those Masses, and there became like little communities that were, I think, celebrating an illicit Mass that was a valid Mass. And I guess my question would be whether the priest was doing the right thing there, because I think in many ways he would be.
Yeah.
But he was disobeying the
if
bishop.
This has something to do with the situation of the underground church in China, where Masses are celebrated that are not approved by the Chinese-sponsored bishop. I know it's a different situation, but it seems to me like the Vatican is okay with it.
Yeah, let's see what Colin has to say about it. What do you think about celebrating Mass contrary to the wishes of the bishop?
I think in the West, like you suggest, is probably the case. It's probably not appropriate. I understand people had strong feelings about this. A lot of people scoffed at the advice being given on COVID. They may or may not have had legitimate reasons. I think in the end, a lot of people did die. So certainly it was not riskless and risk-free. But aside from the medical dimensions of it, in and of itself, the priest put his hands in the lap of the bishop and promised he and his successors to obey. It was a lawful order. The church has done it before. You may disagree with the prudence of the order. You may disagree with the scientific basis upon which it was made and the justification of that. Nonetheless, it was a lawful order. Lawful orders don't need to be prudent. They're an exercise of authority. Authority is sometimes prudently exercised and sometimes imprudently exercised. The history of governments, as well as the history of ecclesiastical government, is filled with imprudent exercises of that authority. It doesn't relieve the priest of the responsibility to obey his bishop as he promised either that particular man or one of that man's successor in that office. So I would say I think the laity generally probably didn't understand that point of it. I think it is matter certainly to bring up in confession and let the priest make the judgment of that. But certainly in the case of the priest, I don't think that was justified. Now, some made some canonical examples of that, but usually of justifications for it. But I think it's a stretch. It's a stretch unless you're in China, you're in a situation of persecution, and so on and so forth. So, yes.
Okay, Ben, I'm going to leave it there. I think that was a clear answer. Thank you very much for the question. We have to take another break, last break this hour. Colin Donovan will be right back to answer more of your questions. And then if you're on the line at the end of the hour, just hang on. We'll get to you because Tim Staples is coming in for the second hour. As I send you off to the break, I just want to remind you, we've got that free ebook for you, The Beginner's Guide to Biblical Prophecy, free right now at shop.catholic.com.
There's only one Catholic Answers Live.
Do you love praying for people? Have you ever wanted to use your gift of prayer to share Jesus with others and build up the body of Christ? Start a public prayer station with St. Paul Street Evangelization. Listen to people's needs, pray with them, or invite them to meet you at church. St. Paul Street Evangelization can help you get started. Find out how at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects home buyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
He is only one of 4 popes honored as the Great.
Matthew Bunson and the Doctors of the Church.
St. Leo I was pope at a time when Roman civilization was being overrun by barbarian armies. He stood as a light in the darkness and even saved the city of Rome from destruction by Attila and the Huns. Leo died in 461.
For more about the Doctors of the Church, visit doctorsofthechurch.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Colin Donovan is our guest. You know Colin from hearing him on the EWTN radio network, and he is the vice president for theology at EWTN. I'm sure you've heard him on Open Line. Not Diego's favorite show, however, on EWTN radio. Diego's favorite show is Catholic Answers. And I'm very grateful that you called while Colin was on to say that, Diego. Up next, Waylon in Kentucky, listening on the Catholic Answers Live app. Waylon, glad to have you. Go ahead with your question for Colin Donovan.
First off, can you guys hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for taking my call. My question is this. Are Homo sapiens the only members of the genus Homo that possess the image of God?
I would say the likely answer to that is yes. That's a scientific question with regard to what constitutes the genus and the criteria for that. But it's a theological and philosophical question as to the infusion of the soul. The Church has condemned a couple of theories here. The Church has condemned the view that at some time the soul as a spiritual capacity of man arose in some fashion from the matter of man. So if you believe in evolution and the different forms of Homo developed and proceeded at some point spontaneously, perhaps with the rise of the animal intelligence of the creature, suddenly now they have free will and all of that. The spiritual capacity is there. The Church says no, that's not possible. Spirit does not rise from matter. The other view would, of course, that would be condemned is that we are purely a material creature, and that these, these pre-existing human-like forms simply are material forms, and we are just a material form. So, hey, what's the big deal here? There's no such thing as spirit. There's no such thing as a soul. Both of those would be condemned by the Church. But at some point we know that, if there's not impossibility of a special creation of the human body. But there is, certainly science suggests, the likelihood of some kind of development by which, by ever higher forms, which follows the the pattern of nature. God, I would say as a theologian, God manifests the infinite variety that he himself is. In being one and universal and infinite, also is contained in him all possible grades of being. And so we see that in the angels, certainly we see that in the creatures, from the simplest creature to the most complex man. So there is a certain reflection of God in this progressive increase of native animal intelligence, arriving at the level of animal intelligence that human beings have without a soul. But the moment in which two persons began to exist, that took an intervention of God. So I guess the answer to your question is a provisional yes. We weren't there. We don't know there. Or maybe I got your question backwards here. Yes, we are the only members of the genus that possess the image of God, regardless of the natural intelligence that any other primates of any degree have or had in the past possessed or possess today, such as apes and so on.
Okay, well, Waylon, makes sense to you?
That was a good answer. It's really interesting. Gives me a lot to think about. So thank you for taking my call.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're putting that in your column, Colin. That goes in your. That's a win for you. Appreciate that.
Well, maybe he'll call back and modify his opinion now. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't want Colin's head to get too big. All right, let's go to Paula right here in San Diego, watching on Facebook Live. Great. Hi, Paula. You there with us?
Yes. How are you doing today?
Very, very well. Have you ever listened to us on 1450 AM here in San Diego?
No, I haven't.
Oh, give it a shot. That's a new station here, and they're doing great.
Oh, I will definitely. It's station 14 what?
1450 AM.
Perfect. I will definitely do that. Anyways, I absolutely love your show, and I feel very blessed to have a show like this where if I have a question, I can always have someone that I can turn to learn or to ask. You know, I'm new to the faith, and this is just one of the best things for me to learn more about our Catholic faith, and so thank you for doing so.
That's beautiful, Paul. How new to the faith, if I may ask? Did you just come into the church?
A couple years.
Couple years, great.
Yeah, a couple years.
Well, God bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you for those kind words. Go ahead. Yeah, sure. Go ahead
Thank
with your question for Colin.
So my question is I've heard of the rapture, and was wondering if Catholics actually believe in some sort of rapture will occur.
Yes, because it's in Scripture, and that is that at the end of time, at the very end of time, when Christ returns, those who, after the conflagration of the Antichrist and the end, are still alive when the Lord comes, will be seized up. This is where the word rapture comes from, and meet him in the air. But that's the end of history. That's not the rapture as you'll hear it on other radio stations or in other theologies of the non-Catholic churches. For them, the rapture is something that occurs at a distance of 1,000 years before the coming of Christ, or before the end of history. And during the rapture, the Christians will be sort of taken out of it. In other words, they won't endure the sufferings that will come. And there are different theories there. So even although they teach this, they don't agree among themselves as to, will it, where it occur, when it will occur. And I'm by no means an expert. Probably Jimmy or somebody else at Catholic Answers could do a better job of dealing with these various theories of the pre-tribulation, mid-tribulation, post-tribulation rapture, and all of the intricacies. So obviously, Scripture is not all sufficient, despite what they keep telling us, in order to figuring out this truth. And I would say not only is it not all sufficient, but it's simply wrong, because the church that has borne the sacred Scripture from the time of its writing to today has an entirely different understanding of it as occurring at the very end of history, when those who survive all of this, rather than those who are spared it, go to meet the Lord in the heavens. And there's I always think this is the most significant, one of the most significant things you never hear commented on. Our Lord said to the women of Jerusalem, he was referring to the destruction of Jerusalem. But traditionally, that is also a sort of prefigurement of the destruction at the end of the world, the conflagration at the end. He said, if they do this to the dry wood, or the green wood, meaning myself, the Son of God made man, what will they do to the dry? It's a pipe dream to think that we who are the dry wood, the church, the living here on earth, we strive for holiness, but we don't have the holiness yet of Christ himself, that we will be preserved from the persecutions and sufferings of the end. That, I believe, is contrary to Scripture. And that's what the rapture view in the dispensationalist theology essentially says, at least in some of the theories. Spared all those tribulations. You've seen the bumper stickers, if the driver is suddenly gone, he's been raptured or something like that. No, that we're not going to be spared anything. We, the mystical Christ, will suffer as Christ did. So there's no quick way out of the tribulations that may come upon the world at some point.
Is that clear, Paula?
Okay. Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insight.
Well, great.
And it's going to help me, because people here at work are talking about UFOs and stuff, and I'm just like, what? So thank you so much.
Oh, you know what?
Well,
I work with a guy that talks about UFOs too. As a matter of fact, he's got a whole podcast where he talks about UFOs. That would be Jimmy Akin.
Yes.
Thanks,
that's
Paula.
Beaming up. That's not the rapture, right?
Right. Beam me up is a different thing. I'm going to try to get another caller in, Paula. So thank you, Kevin in Florida. You got to be quick if you'd like to get an answer from Colin.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Go ahead.
My question for Colin is, would someone who committed suicide go to heaven if it was mental health related?
No. And, no, not no to your question, but...
Oh, wow.
No, we can't know the state of soul, but the church, unlike in the past, where if you did that, you would be assumed not to go to heaven. The church does not, understanding better the psychology of people who do that and the fact that mental health is often behind it. Sure, there are people who do it as a satanic pact and things like that. That's different. But for mental health issues, the church does not assume that. You can receive a Christian burial in the church, the charity of the church and the prayers of the church for that individual. Whether they go to heaven, hell, or purgatory, of course, is the judgment that God himself will make.
Okay, Kevin?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. You're feeling all right, though, Kevin. You're not feeling suicidal yourself.
No. Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I'm always good.
All right. No, but I've had this question come up, and then I realized, oh, this was a personal question. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. And if anybody out there is having suicidal thoughts, call 911. You can get help for it, and there is lots and lots of good help for that. Colin, we've reached the end. Kevin did a really good job of asking his question quickly, and I appreciate.
He did. Thank you.
Yeah. At first, I thought you were saying no, they can't go to heaven, but pulled right back out of that. You do a great job on Open Line. You can hear Colin, but you know what? All the good stuff at EWTN, there's a theologian behind that, and Colin is the Vice President for Theology at EWTN. I hope it won't be too long before we see you again, Colin. Thank you.
I hope not too.
Hey, if you're on the line, stay on the line. Don't go anywhere. Tim Staples going to be here before too long. We'll continue with Open Forum. And if you haven't dialed and you'd like a question answered about the Catholic faith, go ahead and dial 888-318-7884. We'll take a quick break. Be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live right after this. Hello and welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. As promised, Tim Staples here. And thanks for hanging on the phones, those who did. Phone lines are full at the moment. It's open forum. Thanks to Colin Donovan, who always does a great job for that first hour. And open forum, what does that mean? Well, that means you can call with any question about the Catholic faith, whether you're Catholic or not, whether you're Christian or not, whether you're human or not. You are welcome to call 888-318-7884. If you're human and you got to be able to dial a phone and talk, though. But we'll take the call if you can. 888-312 Truth. Tim Staples, the author of Behold Your Mother, a biblical and historical defense of the Marian doctrines. The man who made the DVD with the greatest DVD title ever, Jimmy Swaggart Made Me a Catholic. And the author also of Nuts and Bolts, a practical how-to guide for evangelism. Tim Staples, how are you?
I am doing so well. It just might be against the law, but I'm not sure.
Well, I hope that it's not. I'd hate to see you get pulled over during the show. But you look at that. Did you see that? Every single line.
Oh,
lit
my goodness.
for you. People are ready for you to answer some questions.
As long as they don't ask me stuff I don't know the answer to.
I know that is annoying, isn't it?
Can you help me with that?
Oh yeah, sure. I make stuff up. I have no compunction about it. I'll just make it up. You have a very high moral standard when it comes to that. 888-318-7884. I think we're just going to go shoot right to Anonymous, and we'll get this thing started. Anonymous, thank you for your call. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Yeah, so I like to watch YouTube videos or listen to YouTube actually while I'm doing work around the house or anything else I'm doing. And one of the videos that popped up was a video on occultism, like talking about revealing the secrets of magic. I haven't watched it actually, and the description doesn't tell me what the video's about because I guess it wants me to watch it, and I don't know like if I should watch it. Or I guess more generally my question should be, to what extent can we expose ourselves to occultist magic media without it being sinful?
Right. That is a great question, Anonymous. And immediately, you know what comes to mind, Cy, is my friend Adam Bly. Now, have we had him on the broadcast yet? If we haven't, we need to.
I don't think so.
He is...
A long time ago?
A long time ago. Yeah, he is the demonologist for the Archdiocese of Pittsburgh. And he's a layperson, but is an expert in, and I'll tell you, he freaks me out, and so does all that occult stuff and demonology. I mean, thanks be to God, greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. But when you get into these areas, Anonymous, yes, it can be dangerous. In fact, Adam shared with me some things about some television shows that the very ones maybe that you were watching, that some of the actors have ended up becoming possessed or harassed by demons because they're dabbling in these occult areas and often without knowing it. So I use that as an introduction to say this. It's not that the church says, no, it's absolutely wrong. You can never watch a television show about the occult. That is simply not true. The church doesn't get into minutia like that. However, there are caveats galore when we talk about messing around in these areas. So if you are watching a show like my friend Adam Bly would do for reasons of, apologetics, ministry, ministering to people who fall into these areas, that's one thing. If you're watching these things to gain information so that you can be helpful to folks who are struggling, that is a possibility, right? But again, you have to be very careful. I tell my kids, for example, Anonymous, because a couple of my kids watched online, they got a hold of some of these, ghost chasers and that sort of thing. And I put my foot down immediately, and I explained to them why they will not watch those again as long as they're under my roof, because you're not equipped to be able to deal with that sort of stuff. And when these folks are getting into ghost whispering and all sorts of occultic practices and whatnot, they are opening themselves up. They're opening the door to the demonic. And so it is very dangerous, you know. So I would simply say, Anonymous, be careful, you know, consider your own intentions. Why am I doing this? Why am I watching this? Pray about it, and remember the dangers. And I think it can be certainly morally acceptable to watch a video about the occult. Again, you know, people will say, you know, can I go to a Protestant service? I do, but to evangelize.
Yeah.
You know, just like St. Paul goes into the synagogues, right? He wasn't going there to reject Jesus and acknowledge, you know, the high priest of that time as his high priest, and he's going to reject the high priest who is Jesus Christ. Of course, that would be unacceptable, but certainly you can, and I've done it many times, whether it's with a friend or somebody who's inquiring, going in and in order to evangelize. But it's another thing if I go in open to being misled and led away from the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I use that as an analogy because you do have to check your intentions. Why am I doing this? Am I really curious? Am I dabbling in something that I don't understand? I just kind of want to see what is happening. I would say to you, knock it off. Don't do it. Don't watch this stuff if that is your intention, because that can be dangerous.
Anonymous, thanks. I'm going to take an opportunity to give a little plug here to a Catholic Answers Focus interview we did called The Truth About Exorcism. It involves some conversation about demons. But while you're working around the house, have an hour with Father Vincent Lampert, the exorcist for the Archdiocese of Indianapolis in Indiana. And I'm sure you'll get all the excitement, none of the risk, because he's a very holy and charitable person, and you'll learn all kinds of cool stuff. Catholic Answers Focus, The Truth About Exorcism. You can get that on YouTube as well. Our number is 888-318-7884. It's open forum. Tim Staples is here. We're going now to New York, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. Kai in New York. Glad to have you, Kai. Are you there with us?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
We can, yeah. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Thank you guys so much for taking my call. So I heard someone on the internet, and it started me because it was a Catholic speaking about the Eucharist.
Right.
And he drew a distinction between the Eucharist being what he said literally the body and blood of Christ, and truly and actually being the body and blood of Christ. And he said it isn't literally, but it is truly and actually the body and blood of Christ.
Oh.
And I was wondering, what does this distinction mean? How do we understand it? Should we use it? Or is this just semantics?
Well, can I just say something before?
Sure.
I think that this comes because the atheist philosopher or scientist, Richard Dawkins, posted a tweet or something, or an Instagram post or something of how naive or kind of foolish Catholics are, because they believe that it's literally the body and blood of Jesus, and basically saying these people are nuts. And this started a debate on the internet of people responding, but some people saying, well, literally is not really Catholic language. But so go ahead, Tim.
Right, gotcha. So I'm glad you clarified that, because I wasn't familiar with the context. But the bottom line is, Kai, Jesus is literally present in the most blessed sacrament. And we do not want to say that Jesus is not literally present, but he's truly and actually, because that makes no sense whatsoever. In fact, when the priest says the words of institution, this is my body, this is the chalice and my blood, bread and wine are no longer present. Literally, Cy Kellett.
They are literally not there.
They are literally gone. There is not a smidgen of bread or wine present. It is entirely, fully, literally the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord, as Pope St. Paul VI said. I believe it's in paragraph 46, as I recall, of his great encyclical of 1965, Mysterium Fidei, in his physical reality, body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Lord. But of course, he qualifies that but he's not present in the manner in which bodies are said to be in a place. And that gets into the entire theology and undergirding philosophy of substance, what we mean by substantially present. But perhaps that goes beyond what your question is. What I really want to emphasize here, literally, Kai, I'm going to literally emphasize that after the consecration, there is no more bread and wine. In fact, and this is one of the reasons why we say, we as Catholics believe what Jesus said in John 6:53. Unless you eat the flesh, Son of Man, drink his blood, you have no life in you. When you are consuming the Eucharist, you are not chewing on bread. You're chewing on the body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Lord. That's radical stuff, isn't it, Si?
It is indeed, yeah.
We believe that, but he's not present. And I think if I would have been able to actually get into that conversation that you were engaging with there, Kai, I think what they're doing is trying to avoid a crass sort of literalism that says, when you bite into the Eucharist, Jesus bleeds.
Yeah.
Right? That, he's like curled up in a little ball, really small in the Eucharist, which is not true. He is present, body, blood, soul, and divinity, but in a different manner or mode of being. He's not there in accordance with his natural mode of existence as he exists, for example, at the right hand of the Father in heaven right now. The humanity of Christ is present in a real location, right? He has quantity, quality, and location, which are the three characteristics of our accidental reality, right? Quantity, quality, and location. That's why, by the way, Pope St. Paul VI said that Jesus is not present in the manner in which a body is said to be in a place, because that's accidental, right? Whether Cy Kellett moves his arm here or there, he's still Cy Kellett, right?
Right.
When we're talking about substantial presence, this is absent of quantity, quality, and location. This is a sort of, as Dr. Ludwig Ott put it, I love the way he says it. It's kind of a quasi-spiritual state. It's real material, but it's not matter as we engage it in its, because all I see when I'm seeing Cy Kellett right now is his accidental qualities. That's all I have access to, right? So that's all
when
we
those
really
are taken away, what do we have?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do we have? Well, we have substance. What is that? I
don't
know. But I know what it's not.
Yeah,
right? That's the way the mysteries of the faith are. All right. Now, maybe I'm going too long on this, Kai, but the bottom line is we really want to emphasize the importance of understanding that the real presence of our Lord does, in fact, mean literally. But I think, again, what those folks were trying to get at is it's not a crass literalism where, you're hurting Jesus. And there was a lot of popular piety, in decades gone by, where the nuns would say, don't bite the Eucharist because you'll hurt Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So you let it dissolve, as if the acids on my tongue and then later in my stomach wouldn't hurt Jesus, right? But, there was a lot of, and I say pious because there were people well-intentioned that didn't understand what substance and accidents really are. But at any rate, Kai, does that help at all?
Yeah, that really clears it up. Thank you so much.
All right,
Good.
brother.
Kai, if you hang on the line, I'd like to send you a copy of my book, A Teacher of Strange Things, Who Jesus Was, What He Taught, and Why People Still Follow Him, because essentially the strange thing is a sacramental life. It's a strange way of talking about the world, and one that, as a matter of fact, many of our fellow Christians deny that he did teach. So if you hang on, I'd like to send you a copy of that book. We'll take a quick break now. Be right back with more Open Forum with Tim Staples on Catholic Answers Live.
This is Bishop Chad Zielinski from the Diocese of Fairbanks of Northern Alaska, and you are listening to Catholic Answers Live.
The Aquinas Writing Advantage program is part of Homeschool Connections' set of online courses for your Catholic homeschool. Homeschool Connections' website is homeschoolconnections.com.
Underwriting for Catholic Answers Live is provided by Real Estate for Life. Real Estate for Life connects homebuyers and sellers to real estate agents while supporting pro-life organizations. On the web at realestateforlife.org.
There will come a day when each of us will be asked to review the movie of our life and give an account to God. We will sorrowfully relive the bad times and joyfully revisit the good. Thankfully, no matter what you've done, there is hope, since Jesus came not to condemn the world, but to save it. So if you've been away from church for a while, we invite you to come home and find the peace that only comes from God. Visit CatholicsComeHome.org.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live, open forum. Tim Staples, having a lot of fun, and lots of folks on the line, so I'm going to keep moving. But you're welcome to call with any question about the Catholic faith, whether you're Catholic or not, and quite a few non-Catholics have called today, and we're very happy about that. Also, if you're not a Christian, you're welcome to call. If you have a question, a basic question about God or morals or something like that, it's all welcome during open forum. We're going now all the way down to Destin, Florida, listening on EWTN. Felix, you there with us, Felix?
Gentlemen, I enjoy your show pretty much 4 days a week as I'm driving. My question is, I am a practicing Catholic, and I, of course, in the subject of Mary and Joseph, I do believe that as the Church teaches, that Mary was perpetually a virgin, and that Joseph was her chaste spouse, and that they were truly married because they had been betrothed before Mary, of her own free will, agreed to bear the Son of God. So, and so I believe that they were, it was a true marriage, but they lived in a chaste circumstance. But then the Church teaches that not consummating the marriage is a grounds for considering that a marriage is invalid. So my question is that a contradiction, or is it like a case of where humanity, we are bound by the laws of the Church, but God is not. Is not.
Okay.
Is that the case? How would you explain that?
Gotcha, Felix. Yeah. No, this doesn't have to do with God not being bound by the sacraments or anything like that. The real issue here is that we got to back up and clarify something, because a marriage is not invalid because one of the spouses either cannot consummate or for some reason refuses to consummate. Something happens, goes nuts, who knows?
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't make the ratified union invalid at all. You can have a valid ratified union, and what's necessary for that, of course, is in order for it to be valid, you have to be open to life. Right? So your intention has to be open to life. But if it's not consummated, that is not just grounds for annulment. In fact, that's not necessarily the case. What is the case is that marriage can be dissolved because it is a marriage on the natural level. Remember, in the Old Testament, I'm sure you know this, Felix, right? Jesus said Moses permitted divorce in the Old Testament. Now, how can that be? How could Moses do that? Well, we know on the natural level, even though marriage is intrinsically indissoluble, extrinsically, no, I got it right the first time. It's intrinsically indissoluble. That is, the couple can't decide we're going to divorce. On a natural level, a divine authority can dissolve that natural union, and that's why Moses had the authority to do that. But when a marriage becomes ratified and consummated in the new covenant, and this didn't exist in the old, but in the new covenant, that union because it is sacramental and consummated, cannot be dissolved by any authority. The Pope, bishops, doesn't matter. Nobody can dissolve that marriage. It is until death do we part, right? Now, in this case, though, with Mary and Joseph, when they had that, and you are correct, they had a betrothal, which was akin to what we would call a ratified marriage. This is why when the angel, comes down to Joseph, Joseph is upset because Mary's pregnant. Oh my goodness. Joseph says, I must divorce her. Apolussai in Greek, I'm going to have to put her away or divorce her. The angel says, fear not to take Mary, your wife, right? Why would he divorce her or intend on it unless they were already married? So they did have a legitimate, valid, ratified marriage, but only on the natural level. That's valid. And Felix, we can know that both Mary and Joseph were open to life. They were the ultimate examples of being open to God's will. But remember, Felix, God's in charge. In fact, in my book, Behold Your Mother, A Biblical and Historical Defense of the Marian Doctrines, in the section on Mary's perpetual virginity, I talk about this, how that even in the New Covenant times, we have what are called Josephite marriages. There's some very famous Josephite marriages. Dr. Warren and Ann Carroll are two very famous ones, and there are many more. These wonderful brothers and sisters in Christ entered into marriage open to life, but things happened. God intervened and called them to what's called a Josephite marriage. And that's to follow in the footsteps of Mary and Joseph, who were both open to life, but God had a higher purpose for their marriage. And that's something we all need to remember as married folks. We can't do whatever we want in marriage. I know among many Protestants, they abuse Hebrews that says the marriage bed is undefiled to say, anything goes. That is not the case. We must keep God's will even in the midst of our marriages, and remember that God comes first in our marriages. God can intervene in our marriage and call us with particular callings, and that's the case here, Felix. Mary and Joseph were called to a much higher calling in being called to be the mother and the stepdad, so to speak, of Jesus. So their marriage was absolutely valid. Now, because it was not consummated, of course, if it was the normal course of events, that marriage, if they, let's say one of them wanted to consummate and the other didn't, then you would have problems, right? Then you could have an intervention to where that natural marriage could be dissolved. But of course, that wasn't the case in the case of Mary and Joseph. We have a valid marriage, in fact, a paradigm beautifully in the church for both the celibate life and the married life. But does that make sense, Felix?
So what you're saying is that if a couple decided to get married, but they did not consummate the marriage, that would still be a valid marriage, but it could be dissolved if later on there was a problem.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
It's not because of the non-consummation. That does not mean it's invalid. It would be dissolved if, in fact, or it could be annulled if you had one of the couple, for example, who lied going into the union and said, "Oh, I'm open to life," and then after marriage, "No, I'm not anymore." Well, that would be grounds for an annulment as well as dissolving, but that would not be a valid, so you wouldn't dissolve because it's not a valid union to start with, because part of what constitutes marriage is you have to be open to life. So just remember, Felix, when you enter, now I gave you the example of Mary and Joseph. When you enter a normal couple that are not the Immaculate Conception and St. Joseph, there's all sorts of factors that would enter in here that could, in fact, nullify that marriage because of, the fact that you didn't have the holiest person outside of Jesus Christ ever, and St. Joseph, who is uniquely the second holiest person in history. So there's all sorts of factors, Felix, that you would have to factor in when considering a couple like Anne and Warren Carroll, which had a legitimate Josephite marriage. Let's say problems entered in later, well, then that would, those problems would have to be considered.
Felix, thanks very, very much. I know in the Middle Ages there was a phenomenon where a married couple, maybe older, would go to live in the monastery, and they would separate. Is that still something people could do, or
absolutely
you could do that?
That is, and it would be under the supervision of a bishop or a spiritual director. Would have to be approved, but absolutely.
Felix, thanks very much. It's open forum. Tim Staples is our guest. More of that right after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Have you enrolled in the Catholic Answers School of Apologetics? Let me ask you a more important question. Do you believe as a Catholic that you have an obligation to share the Catholic faith? In fact, the Church has answered this question, and the answer is that all confirmed Catholics are obliged to share the faith. It's actually in canon law. Catholic Answers is here to help you fulfill that obligation. Our School of Apologetics courses will equip you to help all the people you come in contact with understand what the Church teaches and why. A great place to start is with all the Catholics in your life. Learn the art of apologetics from the best of the best and start sharing the gospel today. Visit schoolofapologetics.com. That's schoolofapologetics.com.
Did you know you can access Catholic Answers Live right from your phone or other mobile device? Download the Catholic Answers Live app today. It's free, and you'll have instant access to our daily broadcast, the schedule of upcoming shows, and you'll even be able to search the archive and listen to thousands of past shows. The Catholic Answers Live app, available now on iOS and Android.
Most of us Catholic parents agree our number one goal in life is to pass on the faith to our children. But here's the bad news. Today's world has a million ways to steal your kid's soul. Don't be afraid, says Father Sebastian Walsh. God loves your children even more than you do, and He desires their salvation more than anything. In his groundbreaking new book, Always a Catholic, Father Walsh shows you how to cooperate with God to bring about the fulfillment of His will for your kids. Always a Catholic reminds us that keeping our kids in the faith is about the way we live our Catholicism in our own lives and as a family from day to day. Order your copy of Always a Catholic by visiting shop.catholic.com today or ask for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. I got to say, it's a proud day for the men here at Catholic Answers running. I don't know when the last time we ran an entire 2-hour program of Catholic Answers Live and no women, because the Rosillo sisters are on vacation and Maria's out today. And so we've got Nathaniel running the phones. Who's in the videos? Andrew? Andrew doing the video, and Zach doing the soundboard. It's a... Do you want me to mention you, Darren, or just leave you out of this? Okay, I'll leave you out of it. Darren running everything, but I won't say anything. Good job, man. I'm really impressed that we can do this without women. I didn't know that we were capable of this, but I feel like this is a win for the masculine side.
Well, it's not over yet.
Well, that's true. That's a good point. 888-318-7884, our number. Mike in North Carolina, listening on the new and improved Catholic Answers Live app. You're up next. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Very well,
Good.
Thank you.
All right. I had a question about predestination.
Yes.
But I think one of the commercials there, when I was on hold, kind of answered it for me.
Really?
Because, yeah.
Even our commercials are spreading the faith and answering people's questions. That's a heck of a show.
I was battling it, and it came down to why would God want to predestine anyone to hell when Jesus came to save us, not doom us?
Right. Yeah. And the answer, of course, you probably heard, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church says in paragraph 1037, God predestines no one to hell. In order to go to hell, one must freely commit a mortal sin and remain impenitent unto death. God and Scripture is very clear on this, my friend. God wills all to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 4. And 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9. God is not willing that any perish, but all come to repentance. Notice, he positively wills all to be saved. He negatively wills none to be lost, right? It's like God's hitting it every which way but loose. And there are many, many more texts of Scripture like this that indicate God wills the salvation of all. He desires everyone to be saved. But we are given free will, and so we can either freely accept God's plan. He has a predestined plan for all of us to be saved, but we can choose to reject his antecedent plan for us, and it becomes God's consequent will as a result of us rejecting his antecedent will for us to go to hell. That was not God's will for us in an antecedent sense, but only because he's given us free will, we can choose. As I often say, Si, you've heard me say it many times, God respects our freedom so much because he created it. He respects it so much, he will let us go to hell if we want to, even though he's going to pour on the grace. And I always say, brother, if you got a praying mom, you're in big trouble because you'll be miserable trying to get away from God. But he never coerces us. He respects our freedom. Does that make sense?
It makes sense 100%. Yes, sir.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the call. Open forum. We continue. We go now to Cincinnati, Ohio, listening on EWTN. Weston in Cincinnati, Ohio. Go ahead, Weston, with your question for Tim.
Yeah, hi. I just had a quick question about blessings. So obviously, priests can bless their spiritual children.
Yes.
We see that the biological parents can bless their children. Is the same true for godparents? So can a godparent bless their godchild?
Yes. It's a great question. And the bottom line is all of us can bless stuff, right? By virtue of our baptism. Really what you find in the magisterial teachings of the church are distinctions between blessings, right? So a priestly blessing, you and I cannot give, because I'm assuming you're not a priest, Weston. We don't have the power to give a priestly blessing because that requires the sacrament of holy orders. And that is a blessing of a particularly high order. It packs a punch, right? Well, there is an ancient tradition in the church of, as you mentioned, the fatherly blessing as well. It goes all the way back to Abraham and beyond. But especially you see Abraham blessing his son Isaac, and then Isaac, Jacob, and so forth. So fathers do have a special power. Do we define it? No. I don't know what that means. But it means it packs a punch.
Yeah.
Right? And I do it all the time. As my kids that are watching right now, they know I drowned them sometimes when I bless them at night with holy water, because there's a special blessing there. Now, all of us have the power to bless. I mean, we can pray over our meals, we can bless, but it doesn't pack the punch of a priestly blessing, and we should never, and this is another thing the church warns against, is confusing the priestly blessing with any other blessing. We should never mimic it in any way whatsoever. But in the case of, parents, we have a clear case where we can bless our kids. And I would argue as well that godparents have a special role to be a blessing in the life of their godchildren as well. So it would seem to be appropriate there as well. But we're called to bless and not curse, right? So there's a sense in which we can bless anything and everyone as long as we understand that it's not a priestly blessing.
Thanks, Weston. Got to keep moving because lines continue full. Let's go to Ricky in Nebraska, also listening on EWTN. Hey, Ricky, got a question for Tim?
Yes, I do. Hey, thank you for taking my call, guys.
Yes.
Tim, I wanted to say thank you. I emailed Catholic Answers a few months ago about a question on baptism, and you actually responded to that, so I want to say thank you for that.
All right, brother.
I've got a bit of a, I don't know if it's a bit of a doozy, maybe you've gotten it before, but I like to study the Ante-Nicene Fathers, and reading First Clement.
Yes, love that letter.
Clement, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Clement, obviously Clement of Rome, who's actually, I believe, referenced in Paul's letter to the Philippians, I believe.
Chapter 4, verse 3, yes.
Yeah. And reading First Clement, and I'm reading Trent Horn's book right now, The Case for Catholicism, talking about the canon, and it made me think of First Clement because some of the church fathers viewed First Clement as inspired. I don't know how much unanimity there is in regard to that, but I wanted to ask you this because I just thought it was quite interesting, and I wanted to get somebody's take on it. But in First Clement chapter 25, he talks about the phoenix.
Oh yes.
And I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Sure, I am.
So it sounds like you're familiar with that.
Yes.
What are we to make of Clement's language here in regards to the phoenix? Because it seems as if he's referring to a real bird.
Right.
So I just wanted to get,
Sure.
your opinion on it.
But he's using the phoenix as a metaphor for Christ.
Exactly, and the resurrection in particular.
Okay.
So, Ricky, here's the key. First of all, my take on that is just if I'm teaching my kids and I say, as Hamlet, we see says, or any other work of fiction, I may say, remember how many times do I say this, kids? And I know they're watching. I'll say, what does Fred Astaire say in Swing Time? Pick yourself up, dust your... Or I'll call him not necessarily Fred Astaire, but by the name of his character. So we often refer to movies, books, and so forth, and the names used, and use them as metaphors for all sorts of things. This is something that is common throughout history, and my take is that's what Clement of Rome is doing. He's using it as a metaphor for the resurrection, and it's an apt metaphor. But now, what if, Ricky, Clement, and there's no real way of knowing from the text because he describes the phoenix. Well, that's what you do when you talk about fictional literature. You describe it because it's in the description that the metaphor has its power, right? But let's say he actually believed there was such a bird, or even is such a bird as the phoenix. That would have no bearing whatsoever on his papal authority, or we wouldn't say that's incorrect, right? And let me use an analogy. If an inspired author of sacred scripture believes the earth is flat, right? Or believes, let's use another example. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, if you read the two creation stories, that believe the earth had a dome over the top of it, and there were waters above the dome, and then windows are opened, and that's how rain comes down.
Yeah.
Right? Does that mean there's error in Scripture? No, this was the common understanding of the time, and the inspired author is not making the assertion that this is true and God says there really is a dome above heaven. He's just speaking in a manner of speaking. This is the way people spoke back then. This was sort of presupposed. I'll use one more analogy to make this clear, Ricky. It's like the weatherman who says sunrise tomorrow will be at 5:30, right? Do we immediately fire this guy? He thinks the sun's going to rise, at 5:30. This guy doesn't know about the fact that, geocentrism went out a long time ago. No, this is just a manner of speaking, and that's the way language works, down through the centuries. So either way you look at it, Ricky, whether you take the fact that I believe he's just referring to a fictional character, or if you believe that somehow he actually believed it, as I'm sure a lot of ancient people really did believe it. Neither is a problem to his magisterial teaching as Pope.
Ricky, we'll leave it there because we got to take a break, and we got a bunch more questions to answer. Before I send you to the break, I want to read you this script that Carrie gave me. This is such a good script. I'm going to read it. Tick, tick, tick. That's early bird time passing you by. Don't let it happen. Only 4 days remain to take advantage of the early bird pricing for the Catholic Answers Annual Conference.
Uh-oh.
It's what?
Only 4 days?
Yeah, on Friday, the early bird pricing is over.
I got to get the message out to my peeps. Go ahead.
Well, that's why I was reading the script. I thought I was doing a fine performance of this ad that Carrie wrote for me. September 23rd through 26th at the Hyatt Regency La Jolla, right here in beautiful, sunny San Diego. Tim's going to be giving a talk. All the other apologists will give a talk. You can talk about who?
I'm talking about Jesus. And did he have the beatific vision from the moment of his conception?
I already know the answer to that. I already know the answer. I'm so proud of myself. But all the talks are on Jesus because the name of the conference is Who Do You Say That I Am? It's all about Jesus. Early bird pricing ends Friday. Enter promo code EARLY for $30 off before Friday, or up through, we'll say through Friday. That's what they meant to write. Full conference ticket includes the banquet dinner, but you can get a partial conference ticket as well. Also, there's still that special room rate at the Hyatt of just $164 a night. I know we've got hundreds of people already coming, but we're shooting for 1,000, and we'd love to see you there. CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Hello, this is Archbishop Alexander Sample of the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon. Keep that dial right here on Catholic Answers Live.
St. John Paul II stated that, for the disciple of Christ, evangelization is a duty, an obligation of love. And the Catechism of the Catholic Church states that evangelization is necessary for salvation.
So we know we're called, but how do we do it?
St. Paul Street Evangelization can help. To learn more, contact us at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Check out EWTN's official YouTube channel. Just follow the link on our homepage at EWTN.com or go to YouTube.com/EWTN.
Watch EWTN's live shows or today's homily from the Daily Mass.
Click the upload button to see our most recent clips.
You can also find all of EWTN YouTube content by clicking the playlist button.
It's all on the official EWTN YouTube channel at YouTube.com/EWTN. Visit today.
Welcome back. Catholic Answers Live. I'm Cy Kellett, your host. Tim Staples is our guest, and it is open forum. And open it is. Lots and lots of folks on the line. So I'm going to just go back to those phones. Joseph in Texas watching on YouTube. Glad to have you watching on YouTube, Joseph. Thanks for that. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for taking my call. I love Catholic Answers. I wanted to ask if, in terms of the extraordinary form, the Latin Rite Mass, does the Pope and or the bishops, by themselves or together, have the authority to ban the Latin Mass?
Well, it depends what you mean by the Latin Mass. All right, when you say ban, let me give you an example. In 1969, when the Mass of St. Paul VI was promulgated, the Tridentine Mass, as it is called, that is the Mass that predated the 1962 reform of the Tridentine Mass, done during the council and approved by Pope John, good old Pope John the 23rd, was derogated, meaning it was never abrogated, but it was derogated, meaning if you were going to say the Latin Mass, you had to say the 1962 version and not the pre-1962. Now, of course, you could get a dispensation to do that as you can now. But yes, the Pope has the authority to declare what the form of the liturgy is going to be. That's part of this awesome gift that the Pope and the bishops in union with the Pope have, as St. Paul describes it in 1 Corinthians 4, verse 1. We are the dispensers of the sacraments of God. The Church has the authority to declare the form under which these sacraments are going to be communicated. Now, of course, the Church doesn't have the power or the authority to change the essential form of the sacraments. The church cannot say, okay, we're going to use beer and pretzels now instead of bread and wine. Church doesn't have that power. But when it comes, and of course that's part of the words of institution in the sacred liturgy. But when there's an ancient axiom in the church, right, that goes something like this: the church giveth, the church taketh away. Right? When the church institutes something on her authority, the church can change it. Right? And that's where I think people get hung up. Now, the good news, of course, is the church has never abrogated. And as you said, to say the church is abrogating the Latin Mass really doesn't make sense, because the official Mass of the Latin Rite is in Latin, right? You can't abrogate the Latin Mass and the last Latin Rite any more than you could abrogate the Byzantine Rite Mass in Greek, because that's what it is. That's what it is constituted by. But of course, the particulars, like which form of the Latin Mass, absolutely. The church has done it before, and pretty much everybody acknowledged that back in 1969, that the form you would say was the 1962 form if you were saying the Latin Mass, like Padre Pio, in fact, when he asked for a dispensation. That's the Mass he was permitted to say. And Padre Pio understood he had to get permission for that. So, but beyond that, I think for folks out there that have heard all these rumors, the Pope's going to ban the Latin Mass and all of this, it's really just not true. When even the rumor that he was speaking to the Italian bishops and he said that it's a possibility that Summorum Pontificum could be abrogated, well, that's the legitimate possibility, because, of course, John Paul giveth, Francis can take away. That is absolutely a possibility. But even if that were to happen, you would simply go back to what the law was before Summorum Pontificum, and you already had Ecclesia Dei, you already had the instructions for the Latin Mass being said. It would simply be said once again by indult rather than, and I thought one of the beautiful things about Summorum Pontificum is when the Holy Father said a priest doesn't have to ask permission. He can say his private Mass in Latin. He doesn't have to ask permission like Padre Pio did in asking the Pope. And I thought that was a huge step forward in reconciling, especially our traditional friends who are no longer in full communion with the Catholic Church, and other good things that were done. But can I give you my prediction? He's not going to abrogate Summorum Pontificum at all. I think this rumor is flying all over. It's much ado about nothing. If it happens, give us a call. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, if half the things that he's been rumored to do would have come
he's going to ordain women.
A different church. Yeah.
He's going to ordain women. Oh, really? Well, he changed canon law and said it's automatic excommunication for the woman who attempts to be ordained and the bishop who attempts to ordain. I don't think he's in favor, Si.
No, indeed. Joseph, thanks for the question. Let's go to Charlie in St. Louis, Missouri, watching on Facebook Live. Charlie, thanks for your call. Go ahead with your question for Tim.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. So I'm wondering why it's, I guess for lack of a better word, dangerous for a Catholic to believe in universal salvation.
Oh, boy, yeah. Well, I think for many reasons. Number one, it's contrary to the teaching of the Church as well as sacred Scripture. And in fact, I wrote 3 articles about this at timstaples.com. If you want to check it out here at timstaples.com, one is called Is Hell Really Real? And then I wrote 2 more answering questions that came as a result of, I got a lot of questions about is hell really real? And in there I point out that all the way back to the First Lateran Council in 1215, in its profession of faith, you have, for example, this statement of the supreme magisterium of the Church, by the way. Christ will come at the end of time to judge the living and the dead, to render to every person according to his works, both to the reprobate and to the elect. all of them. Now, do you notice what it said? To the reprobate and to the elect. Christ is going to come and give to each one of them according to their works. All of them will rise. All of who? The reprobate and the elect. All of them will rise in their own bodies, which they now wear. It's an interesting Latin phrase here. It reads, que nunc gestant, right? All of them will rise in bodies that they are, it's present tense, are now wearing. Very important. Which they are now bearing, or now wearing, so as to receive according to their deserts, whether these be good or bad. For the latter, perpetual punishment with the devil. For the former, eternal glory with Christ. I mean, it's kind of difficult to get language any plainer than that. He is the supreme authority of the church is saying there are people walking around right now wearing their bodies. And they're going to rise again, and some of them will be damned, and some of them will go to heaven. I mean, that's just one example. There are many, many examples. The Catechism of the Catholic Church makes it plain as well when it teaches on on hell itself, for example, and in paragraph 1033. But the danger, because I think your question is not only about does the church teach. Yes, the church teaches there is a hell and people are in it, unfortunately. But is it dangerous to teach the possibility of universal salvation? Absolutely it is. And why is that? Because if that were to be true, then Jesus would be a false prophet. You know, as St. John Paul the Great said in his book, Crossing the Threshold of Hope, on page 185, he says, the words of Christ are unequivocal. In Matthew's gospel, he speaks clearly of those who will go to eternal punishment, and he's referring to Matthew 25:46. And let me just read John Paul. Who will these be? The church has never made any pronouncement, right? So John Paul is saying there's never been an infallible declaration of a person being in hell. But you notice how John Paul is very clear. There will be people there, okay? It's just a matter of who these people will be. And by the way, that's in the Acta Apostolicae Sedis, which is the official and formal teachings of the papal magisterium. And there's many more things we could look at there. But the danger in this, oh my goodness, I think it is enormous. Because think about the repercussions if you are to say that hell, there's a possibility that hell, even a possibility that hell could be empty. That's like saying there's a possibility Jesus could be a false prophet. There's a possibility the magisterium could be wrong. Why in the world would you say that? No, that is not possible. Now, we with God do not desire anybody to go to hell. God doesn't desire anybody to go to hell, right? We already talked about that. God wills all to be saved, but he also wills for us to have free will. He says it in Revelation 3, verse 20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears my voice and opens, I will come into him and fellowship with him and he with me, right? But at the same time, he says unequivocally in Matthew 25:46, as Pope St. John Paul said, these shall depart into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. So if you present this, isn't there more than just a possibility? If you're saying that, wow, hell might be empty right now and forever empty, do you think that might lead to some laxity in the moral lives of people who buy into it? You mean Adolf Hitler's in heaven? Everybody's in, oh my goodness. Well, I'm not so bad. Right. Oh, absolutely. It is really an attack against grace, against justice, and so much that we believe as Catholics.
Charlie, thanks for the question. You feel better if you compare yourself to Adolf Hitler? That makes you feel better about yourself? Okay. Hey, tomorrow we're going to talk about the Second Vatican Council and what was that all about and what came out of it. And was it a good thing or a bad thing? Good thing. We will see you then, God willing. Hey, Thank you very much, Tim Staples.
Too much fun, my friend.
Too much fun, all jammed into 1 hour today. And thanks again to Colin Donovan for the first hour. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, right here, Catholic Answers Live.